I was engaged in a debate by my friend Judah Hoover. This is my participation in that debate, but the opening question was, why is there so much hostility between Christians and the secular, specifically on Facebook posts in this particular question, but that kind of blossoms into the larger question: hostility between theists and atheists generally, hostility between left and right, hostility on the internet, hostility in real life. All of these are topics of breathless news reports full of deep meaning and insight, informed by unreadable quotes from unintelligible academics. And ultimately, I think none of that matters. The question of theists versus atheists is interesting because, of course, almost all atheists are former theists. In America, the atheist movement in particular is ex-Christians engaged in anti-Christianity. They are scourging their minds of the benefits brought to them by their parents. What they're really doing is scourging and scolding and spanking their parents. This is the Marxist tradition in America and in Western civilization generally, is ungrateful, unworthy children attempting to exterminate their parents by philosophical and psychological means, ultimately economic means, and ultimately, in the end, in reality, in death camps. The atheists don't have any good claim to virtue as far as I'm concerned, because the atheists almost always end up on the side of the exterminators. But all of this is really the same thing, in my opinion. It is anti-reality. It is the anti-reality that goes into virtually every movement in the history of movements, in the history of human thought. As soon as some Eric Cartman type had an idea, he immediately tried to find a Butters to become his first follower, to enlist all of the other mindless Butters, genuinely decent, good-hearted people looking only for the best in the world, who get led again and again and again in mass mob movements of slaughter against innocents. This is not new in the 20th century. It was just made efficient, factory-like in the 20th century. This goes back forever. I am the natural prey of those kind of mobs, which is one of the reasons I have learned to be so good at fighting their ideas and their tactics. But this obviously is one of them. The reason that people are so cruel to each other in debate is because they're trying to control one another. And it's important to remember that every action is taken first by the actor upon the actor. Every display is made for the benefit of the person who's making that display. He hopes it will have efficacy with the other party, but he knows it has efficacy with him, and the efficacy it has is it makes him feel like he wants to feel. It makes him feel like he's the person he wants to be. That's why he chose to display himself in that way. And uniformly aggressive displays among combatants who ping-pong back and forth, trying to insult each other into better behavior, to scold and scorn each other into virtue, ultimately to spank, ultimately to slaughter each other. And I don't care which side you're on, when you get the upper hand over the villains who are promulgating their evil doctrine, when you get the upper hand on them, you're going to slaughter them. This is the nature of political power going back forever among human beings, that where political power is not widely dispersed among hoplite fathers, where you have a tyranny in the making, and eventually innocents will be exterminated for political purposes in the pursuit of moral goals by means of palliating imaginary gods. I don't care which gods you pick, whether they're theist gods or atheist gods. This is all about palliation. This is all about a cargo cult. By going through insane rituals, you will have improved the universe in such a way that you not only will have rid it of evil, not necessarily all evil, but definitely this particular evil. You will have rid the world of evil, and you will have proved your own moral superiority by having rid the universe of evil. None of this is true. This is all a lie. None of this can happen. Cannot happen. If you look at the circumstances where you're involved in this kind of towel snapping behavior, you will realize that you cannot even change the person that you're insulting. You cannot even persuade that one person of your point of view. But it doesn't matter anyway, because that's only one person. If you actually went about things in a reasonable, rational, persuasive way, you can change one or two minds here and there, or you can be like me and go out of your way to change the minds of people who will change other minds. That's why I want to talk to fathers, because they have little houses full of young minds that they can help learn my ideas before they're poisoned by the rest of the world. But this is the kind of efficacy that you can have by rhetorical means, is actively persuading people to your point of view, and you do that with the affectionate display, not with the aggressive display. No one was ever scorned or scolded into any better behavior. They might cower or they might rebel, but they will not be better people, because the only way to be a better person is from the inside out, by learning new and better ideas and putting them into regular, habitual, daily, consistent practice. Which is what I'm doing here. That's what the Church of Splendor is for, and that's what everything that I do of a persuasive nature is aimed at that. If you're not behaving in this way, then what you're doing cannot possibly work, and you need to ask yourself why you're engaged in all of these ugly, really vicious, aggressive displays against people that you don't like and don't care about, and don't care if you can actually persuade them in any case, when you know for a fact that you cannot persuade them. Why are you engaged in this behavior? Why are you making these displays? What God is it that you're attempting to palliate? What cargo cult is it that you're attempting to demonstrate your membership in? And what values, what true, honest human values are you avoiding pursuing while you're engaged in this ugly, completely unproductive, useless, self-destructive behavior? What is it that you should be doing instead? Your real values, the values of your life, are real. They actually exist. They are near to hand. They are few in number, and they are actionable. In other words, your real values are your spouse and your children, your home and your job, etc., your hierarchy of values. And some idiot across the country who's voting for the candidate that you think is most an anathema to your way of living, and refuses to see the fundamental brilliance of voting for your candidate instead, and therefore you have to insult each other and call each other the most vicious things and accuse each other of not just the most vicious crimes, but crimes that are actually practically impossible for your opponent to have committed. When you engage in all of that ugly, vicious vitriol, when you work yourself up into a lather about things that matter nothing at all, you're doing it in order to avoid addressing the problems in your life that really do matter. And so my answer to both parties of this debate is look out for your own. Pursue your own values. Keep your own counsel. And don't be an asshole. Don't be an asshole, because the only person whose life you can guarantee that you can change is your own. And by being a daily, habitual asshole to people you care nothing about, you're wrecking relationships that you do care about and turning yourself into a full-time, lifelong asshole. Stop doing that. I would say to Judah, whom I admire no end, and I admire him because I like the way he's raising his children. That's what really matters to me. But I really like him because he likes me. He listens to me. And it's rare, it's so rare in my experience to get anyone who is actually willing to just let me talk and hear what I have to say and cogitate upon it, learn from it, grow from it. I'm not taking his Christianity away from him. I don't want to, and I couldn't do it even if I did want to. No one can do that. Each one of us is controlled from the inside out. There is no way to change that, no matter how loud you yell. All you can change in people, other people, is you can change them from alive to dead. And if you insist that you must change them, ultimately, you or people you have put in power will change people from alive to dead. This is a mistake. This is contrary to all of the values necessary for human life. Don't do that. The way to address other people is affectionately. If you cannot make an affectionate display, don't make any display at all, so said Thumper's mother. If you are met with an aggressive display, turn the other way and smile. Offer an affectionate display in response. The Nazarene said that. He said, turn the other cheek. The affectionate display is the only display that matters because it's the only display that can lead to future transactions. The aggressive display must necessarily cut off all avenues to future transactions except ongoing aggressive displays, except coercion, except force, compulsion. This is in the nature of the aggressive display. There's no way to avoid this in the nature of transactions involving the aggressive display. And this is why these conversations never go anywhere. Not only do you not persuade the other person, you don't even befriend the other person. You get nothing in exchange for your time except the belief that you've done something when you know, in fact, that you've done less than nothing. You've done worse than nothing. You've made your life worse, not better. Stop doing that. But meanwhile, I would like to appeal to Judah and to other men like Judah out there, serious Christians who want to achieve better results with what they're doing. I admire Christians no end, not because I admire their doctrinal arguments, which I think are ridiculous, but because they raise such good children. Not all of them, and not all Christian sects, but certain Christian sects do a remarkably good job of raising really wonderful children. I mean, nobody is perfectly successful at this. There's no such thing as a unbeatable praxis. There's no such thing as a philosophical system that a kid can't turn into Karl Marx and say, no, it didn't, no, it didn't, no, don't have to, don't have to. I'm fine, die. But just die. Don't kill anybody else on the way. But in the meantime, there are lots of Christian families out there that are doing a really great job raising great children, and I admire that no end. That's what matters. Not theism, not atheism, not anything else that you can put a doctrinal label on. How are your kids turning out, and how are their kids turning out? And generation after generation after generation, if you're producing good families, then there are good ideas in your doctrine, even if the underlying theoretical support is weak, is not well defended. Not my problem, and it's not your problem either. I don't go to your church. I don't have to defend your doctrine. You don't have to defend mine. But I would love it if serious Christian fathers would get me invited to speak at your church on Sunday, on Saturday, on whatever day your church meets. It doesn't have to be Christians either. It could be Jews. It could be Muslims. It could be Zoroasters or Sikhs. I'm interested in talking to serious fathers everywhere, but I would love to come and talk to your religious congregation about love, sex, marriage, family, monogamy, promiscuity, the cloying appeal of modernity, and why it is insane to fall for that appeal, why it is hugely self-destructive. I would love to talk to your husbands, to your wives, but especially to your children about why mom and dad have been right about everything that matters. If you want to quibble with them about their underlying philosophical doctrine, that's good. It'll improve your mind. But if you do not follow their good example, then you will be following a bad example by definition because you're growing up with a good one. And I would love to be able to go into churches and tell children again and again and again, I am an atheist. I don't believe any of the doctrine that is taught in this church, and yet I believe in the practices of the people who go to this church, and I can tell you why they're right. I can tell you philosophically why they're right. I can give you arguments that you cannot reject by rejecting their religion, and what do you have to say about that now? So you should have me in to do this. In any case, I'm grateful to Judah for bringing this up. I hope I've shed some light on this subject. You cannot change other people. The behavior that you invest in trying to change other people is futile. It is anti-reality. It is also anti-values. You're avoiding the pursuit of your true values by pursuing something that you know is a disvalue. Stop doing that. You can do better than that. This is the place where you'll learn how to do better. This is the Church of Splendor. My name is Greg Swan, and I am so glad to talk to you. Talk to you again next week.